Right, while you've been having a cup of tea, I've got the balance of our pistons in. Now, normally you would put one piston in at a time because the crankshaft would be sitting in the engine. Hondas give us a bit of a deal in that it's easier to put the pistons in, then put the crankshaft in afterwards, but you do have to be careful. So we're going to pre-lubricate our bearing shells, mains and big ends. We're going to pick the crank up, and there's a bit of a trick to doing this, but hopefully I can do it without causing too much damage to anything. So we know number 2 and 3 piston are up and 1 and 4 are down. So what I'm going to try and do is put the crank in carefully by bringing 2 and 3 over to meet with our ones that are down, and there you go. I managed to do it. Doesn't always go that easy. Sometimes one rod becomes a problem. These things here help because they help guide it in. Before we go and bolt everything up, you'll see the crankshaft now moves backwards and forwards. Now we can't have that, and we need to put some thrust washers in there, which are these little half moon washers here. Now the back side of them is steel, so we can't have steel running on steel. So on the front side, or the thrust side on both of them, is the same material or white metal that the bearings are made out of. So one each way. So what we do is we push the crank to the back of the engine and we just rotate it in like so. No, we don't, because I got that one wrong. I'll just push it back around. I well and truly mucked that one. Yeah. Right, so I got it back out. That was my mistake. So there it is, thrust side towards the crankshaft. Just turn it around nice and gently. Don't try and force it if it won't go. It's going around nicely. There we go. And then what I always like to do, just run a bit of oil around there. We don't want these starting up dry. And then we're going to pull the crankshaft forward. Now there's two ways of doing that. You can use your hand, or you can get a flat bar just behind the crankshaft and just give it a bit of a lever. Remember, our thrust surface out. And there we go, it's sliding around nicely. Once again, never start these without lots of oil. Now we need to check that clearance, so we go to our trusty feeler gauges, and starting with a thin one, or thinnish one. Always the one you can never find. We just want to push it down and see. Now that's going in nice, and that tells us I've got 0.2 of a mil, and I did check the book, and 0.2 to 0.4 was fine. So hey, that's good, we're happy with that. Our next thing is we can take our protectors off. Make sure our pistons and conrods are in the bearings. Right, so just checking our pistons are all up on their crankshaft journals. Once again, bit of oil. Don't be shy. This stuff's a lifesaver. And then we start with our bearing caps. So remember, we I've got the engine around the wrong way, so now I'm dealing with number 4 because it's got number 4 on it. Make sure our little tags all line up when they're down there. Can't, if we get them wrong, everything you've done to date will come unstuck for you very quickly. Number 3, marked number 3, same, make sure our tabs line up, there we go. 2, marked number 2, there's our tab, line our tab up. Number 1, it's got a mark on it. Just out of interest, a lot of people use a dot punch to mark these. You shouldn't actually hit anything inside an engine with a hammer and a dot punch. It should be use a scriber or use a engraving tool. Every time you hit something that's got an interference or a tolerance fit, you run the risk of putting it out of shape or making it go out of shape and upsetting your clearances. So I know it's easy and it was a practice for a long time, but it's not ideal for the engines. Right, we're just going to loosely put all our nuts on. We don't want to rotate the engine while everything's loose, so it's important that we get everything on and torqued up before we rotate the engine. 2 more to do. The hard ones. I might make it look easy, guys, but trust me, I've done a fair few engines and I still have problems, so my fingers aren't as good as they used to be. So, quick power bar, we're just going to nip these up quickly. The engine's now at a rotatable state, but be very careful. So I've preset the torque wrench. We're just going to do these up now. One of the things I was always taught was when you start to do something up in an engine, get a common point. In this case I'm using the oil pickup. So as I tighten everything, I'll always start from this side. Right, never put an extension on a torque wrench. We're going to have to turn the engine over to get our other 2 pistons up. The good thing is today, it is rotating, which is nice. Remember with the torque wrench, once it clicks, it's tight. You don't have to go any more and give it a little bit for good luck. Job is done. Right, that's our pistons and conrods in. Everything's looking fine. Our shims, thrust washers are still there. As I said, don't be scared, a little bit of oil, never hurt anybody. And we're now going to put our cradle back on. Now, we talked about oil feed. It comes through the block into here. Then it distributes along this oil gallery and lubricates all our bearings. Now, we would have measured our bearings so we know our clearances are good. Nice and careful putting it on, we don't want to damage anything. Just out of note too, believe it or not, you can put these crankshafts in the wrong way around, and many a tutor has seen that happen, and the student's been very perplexed as to why they've got all the way back to this stage and the crankshaft's in the wrong way. So you do need to be careful. We'll nip these up carefully. Thank you, Mr. Milwaukee. You're a good friend of mine. As I said, round the circle. We don't want to rattle them up, guys. I'm being lazy using this. Normally we'd do it by hand. Back onto our torque wrench, which is preset. Remember, I said I'd always start from the oil side. Once it clicks, stop. There is another way of checking bearing clearances, which I haven't shown you, but I will show you at school, as will the other tutors, is a thing we call plastic gauge, where we put it under the bearing caps, we torque everything down, we take it all apart, and then we measure the clearance that the plastic gauge has given us. I haven't shown you because I haven't got any here, and I didn't bring any home from school. So the way I do it, you get the same result. It's a little bit tedious or harder to do it the way I do it, but as long as you make notes and you can read a micrometer and a bore gauge, your measurements will be dead accurate. That's our short block back together. Next thing to do is we'll put our oil pump and covers and bits and pieces on, and we'll do that after a break.